Welcome. This is our third listening session with workers around the country. We began this tradition last year. We'll continue to bring in Americans to hear their stories. When work has dignity, hard work pays off for everyone, no matter who you are, no matter where you live, no matter what kind of work you do. Student loan debt is preventing the hard work of a generation of Americans from paying off. More than 43 million Americans are drowning in $1.75 trillion in student debt. It holds them back from buying a house, starting a business, getting married, starting a family. Think about that. This debt looms so large over people's lives, it's determining some of the most personal decisions of a person's life, like when or whether to have children. We all know how this started. The idea is that taking on debt to pay for college will pay off in the long run. It's supposed to lead to better paying jobs. It's supposed to be an investment in your future and a way to work your way into the middle class. This story is especially sold to people who haven't had a lot of advantages in life. First generation college students, immigrants, children of immigrants, low income students, black and brown students. We tell them work hard, play by the rules, you'll get ahead. In far too many cases, student debt has made a lie out of the American dream. The overwhelming number of borrowers do play by the rules. They do work hard. Instead of getting ahead, what happens? They end up with less economic security, fewer choices. They're trapped. Don't tell me it's about personal responsibility. It's about bad public policy that locks people into a broken system. We haven't invested in public education the way we used to, pushing tuition higher and higher, pushing students to take on more and more and more debt. The days that some of us remember when hard work in a part-time job could put you through school are long gone. Too many of the debt forgiveness programs that students are told they'll be able to count on are mismanaged. Too many schools, particularly for-profit schools, mislead students about their future prospects for jobs and paying off debt. Some for-profit colleges are nothing more than scams that leave students with mountains of debt and no degree. That's why we're hearing directly from Americans living with this debt. From Montana and Maryland, we have a worker from Georgia and a native Ohioan who currently lives in Virginia. Their situations are all different, but they all speak to a common experience, how student debt undermines the work they do. In this town, as people debate student loan forgiveness as some kind of academic issue or political wedge issue, their human stories too often get overlooked. We need to hear their voices. So thank you all for being here. Then we can address the growing burden of student debt and restore the dignity of work for far too many Americans struggling with debt. I will introduce each witness and then please tell your story. We are joined by a number of senators. This is a listening session. This isn't where we grill you and ask questions. So all of us essentially from now on will remain silent as you tell us your stories. And I particularly appreciate Senator Warren being here, who has been a leader on this issue, working to encourage the president to eliminate student debt as much as possible. Senator Van Hollen, who represents represents Ms. Harberger, is also here. I know that Senator Ossoff and Warnock from Georgia will be here. I think Senator Tester is going to try to come also. So we will begin. First panelist, Ray Pickett. I chose the Ohioan first. Ray Pickett is the Director of Communications at the Virginia League for Planned Parenthood. And obviously a big day with what we hear about the leak out of the continuing politicized Supreme Court. We'll stick to student debt, I think, Ms. Pickett. She's originally from Toledo, Ohio, Northwest Ohio. She lives in Virginia. Ms. Pickett, please tell us your story. And thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Senator, for having me. And thank you also, senators, for listening. My name is Ray Pickett, and I am 38 years old. I'm a mom, a stepmom, a wife, and a worker. I was born and raised in Ohio, and I moved to Virginia when I graduated from Ohio Northern University in 2007. 20 years ago, I borrowed private and federal student loans to help me pay for college. I graduated with my bachelor's degree and $75,000 in student loan debt. I have repaid over $96,000, much of that towards interest. Yet I am currently in default, and I have no idea how much I owe or which servicers currently hold my loans. I'm not proud to say that when I defaulted on my loans, I did not look back. I began repaying my loans when my 6-month grace period ended in 2007. I was a community organizer, I was a paid intern, and I waited tables at night to make ends meet. I didn't have enough money for my student loans and rent, so I slept on friends' couches. I paid as much as I could, as often as possible for years to Sally Mae. Like many, my estimated monthly payments were over $1,000 a month, with a large portion of the payments going towards interest only. During those years when I was establishing my career, I expected to make more than enough money to repay the loans so that the varying interest rates from 10 to 13% wouldn't matter as much. I would go into forbearance if I needed some time to get back on my feet, I thought. And it simply never happened. There was no light at the end of this dark tunnel of repayment or from the astronomical unfixed interest rates on my private loans. I kept working for nonprofit organizations for over 13 years. I was so afraid of my loans that I didn't open any credit cards because I did not want to put myself in a position where I could not afford to live, which is exactly the situation that I was in. The shame that I have felt about how much debt I was saddled with has affected and continues to affect every aspect of my life, including previously limiting romantic relationships and friendships. It's not fun to hang out with someone who's never going to be able to travel with you or buy a house or own their own car. Towards the end of 2016, I lost my job, and my husband and I made the difficult decision to stop payments on my student loans. I have come to terms with the fact that these student loans will always be with me and will never be paid off. And this is not what I had planned for my life or I expected. Airline safety instructions tell you that if your plane is going to crash, you should put your oxygen mask on yourself first and then on those around you. But when it comes to these loans and educating others, I feel an obligation to make sure that while I do not see a way out of my own loans, they don't have to suffer like I did. My stepdaughter did not follow in my footsteps. She went to a community college, then she went to a 4-year university, and she's finishing her master's degree in social work. My sons both have 529 accounts. They're 6 and 8, and friends and family contribute to their educational funds for the future. I don't know what the future will hold for them or for me, but I hope that should legislation come before you that would offer people like me who thought they were doing everything right any type of relief or forgiveness, that you will think of my story and of my family, and that you will support student loan forgiveness and reforms. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pickett. It's just a stunning statement. And I can see the way you speak and the way you write, why you're the director of communication. So thanks for your insight and your passion. Deborah Harberger is a social worker employed by the state of Maryland. She's a member of the National Association of Social Workers. Ms. Harberger, thank you for joining us. Please begin.
Good morning, Chairman Brown and distinguished members of the committee, Senator Van Hollen, if he's still around. My name is Deborah Harberger, and I am pleased to appear before you today as a proud social worker and member of the National Association of Social Workers. My husband and I are both graduates of public universities and hold master's degrees. I attended Penn State University and the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and he attended the Ohio State University and the University of Maryland, College Park. We attended these schools because of their stellar reputations and commitment to quality education. We also selected these schools because, with scholarships, they became much more affordable. Today, my husband and I live in Baltimore, Maryland, with our 2 children who are 12 and 15 years old. They both attend Baltimore City Public Schools. I have spent the past 18 years as an employee of the state of Maryland. For more than 14 years, I've worked at the Institute for Innovation and Implementation at the University of Maryland. I serve on the faculty, and as the director of the Institute's Policy, Finance, and Systems Design Division, and director of our Ruth Young Center for Maryland, I work with child welfare, behavioral health, and other public agency leaders in Maryland, Nevada, West Virginia, Michigan, and elsewhere to improve access to effective services for children and youth with intensive behavioral health needs. When I enrolled in my Master's of Social Work program in 2002, I was accepted to participate in the Title IV-E Education for Public Child Welfare program, which is a federal training program. This 2-year program provided me with an annual financial stipend in exchange for a 2-year work commitment in state child welfare services. Upon graduation with my MSW in May 2004, my mandatory position paid a meager salary of approximately $34,000. Today, entry-level MSW child welfare social workers in Maryland have a starting salary of $48,000, which does not even match my low salary when factoring in inflation. This position had no pathways for promotion or salary increases for me, so less than 4 years after earning my MSW, I left for the University of Maryland where I could continue to engage in child welfare and social work. I incurred approximately $37,000 in debt for my MSW degree, essentially a full year's starting salary. My student loan payments would have been even higher without the Title IV-E program stipend or qualifying for in-state tuition for the second year of my master's degree. 18 years later, I'm still paying off my student loan debt. I do not see many other options. A Master of Social Work degree is the terminal degree to practice professional social work. An MSW includes 2 years of a practicum in community-based settings, in addition to other required coursework, which makes working while going to school full-time incredibly challenging. While our 2 kids were in childcare, we spent an estimated $157,000 on childcare costs, while we were paying approximately $600 per month for our student loan payments. This meant that, despite our 2 incomes, we incurred debt while covering childcare costs. In 2007, I was excited to learn of the Public Service Loan Forgiveness, PSLF program, which promised loan forgiveness in exchange for 10 years of public service and 120 payments. In 2017, after completing 10 years of public service, I was stunned to receive a denial, informing me that while my payments had been on time and my employment qualified, my particular federal student loans were not eligible. They were part of the Federal Family Education Loan Program, which was discontinued in 2010. Furthermore, my loan servicers and the Department of Education never once informed me of this problem. Instead, in 2017, I was told I could move my loans into a different program and restart the 10-year and 120 payment clock on the loans that I had taken out and started paying back in 2004. I wrote to my senator's office and with nothing further to be done, continued to make my payments. I was grateful when this past fall I had the opportunity to become eligible and applied for the PSLF waiver. I am now waiting for a decision on my application from the Department of Education, including notice about overpayments that I have made. My husband is employed as a senior associate with a Baltimore-based employee-owned architecture and design firm. His total student loan debt from undergraduate and graduate education totaled more than $60,000. Due to interest rates on the loans, we anticipate that we will still be paying his student debt after our son, currently a high school freshman, has completed college. We will still be paying our student debt while borrowing student loans to cover our children's college tuition expenses. Social workers provide essential behavioral health services to communities and are employed in hospitals, child welfare settings, behavioral health clinics, and more. Many social workers like me are engaged in macro social work, providing public service through policy, training, technical assistance, and workforce development. Just last week, the U.S. Senate Finance Committee issued a bipartisan report on the behavioral health crisis in our country. In its release, the chair stated, "Every American must be able to access the mental health and substance use disorder care they and their loved ones need when they need it." That goal is not achievable when social workers so often carry significant student debt. White new graduates have an average debt of $67,000, while the debt burden is substantially higher for social workers of color, an average of $79,000 for Hispanic or Latinx graduates, and an average of $92,000 for Black or African American graduates. The social worker shortage is real and will only get worse, and we cannot afford to drive social workers away from this profession because of low salaries coupled with high student debt. While I appreciate the PSLF waiver, and I hope my application will be approved, it is a short-term and temporary fix to a problem that requires an equitable, transparent, and systemic solution. I urge you to make the PSLF waiver permanent, but do not stop there. Expand the definition of public service to include all social workers and other public service professionals, regardless of the tax status of their employers. Broaden the definition of eligible employment within the Title IV-E Education for Public Child Welfare program, and increase the availability of scholarships and no-interest loans to make undergraduate, graduate, and professional degrees more accessible and affordable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Harberger. Emily Robinson is a high school teacher in Georgia, a member of the National Education Association. Ms. Robinson, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours for as long as you need. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, Chairman Brown, Georgia Senators Ossoff and Warnock from my home state, and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today regarding student loans and public service loan forgiveness. My name is Emily Robinson, and I have been teaching English classes, yearbook, and English to speakers of other languages in DeKalb County, Georgia for 17 years. Currently, I work at Druid Hills High School. However, my student loan debt story began 20 years ago when I was a student at the University of Georgia and trying to decide what I wanted my career to be. I had done some temp work with a staffing service during my summer and winter breaks from college and decided through these experiences that the business world did not appeal to me. I knew I wanted to devote myself to a career in which I could help people. My mom was a teacher, so I thought I would follow in her footsteps. Unfortunately, my dad lost his job when I was a senior at UGA, so my parents were unable to help me financially with college expenses. Being from a middle-class family, I had no problem working hard to make ends meet. I worked part-time at various university jobs during the school year, but discovered it was not enough to pay my bills, so I had to get loans. Immediately following undergrad, I enrolled in a Master of Education program at UGA that had a built-in state certification element with it. Graduate school was expensive, but I knew I needed the master's to be able to be competitive. I even added on some classes so I could get my certification to teach gifted students. I wanted to be as prepared as possible to work with young people. All of my loans were federal loans, no private loans. While I received some forms of student loan forgiveness in grad school, such as the Federal Perkins Loan Cancellation Program and the Hope Teacher Scholarship, a merit-based award for Georgia residents, I still accumulated nearly $40,000 in federal student loans that were not eligible for forgiveness under these programs. I remember when I landed the new job in high school in 2005 that I found out my annual salary would be $40,000. And it was daunting to face the prospect of working for free for an entire year to pay back my loans, especially being in a profession in which the possibilities for major pay increases were slim to none. However, I was young and eager, so I pushed it to the back of my mind and set forth determined to work with teenagers. The first few years of my career were financially challenging. I had to get side hustles to afford life as a teacher, and I struggled sometimes to balance all my new expenses on a teacher's salary. I never went into forbearance or default on my student loans, but I did get put on an interest-only repayment plan. The loan servicer suggested it. This kept my monthly payments lower than using the standard repayment, but it also meant that when the time for this was up, my monthly payments jumped, and I wasn't prepared for it. I deferred payments into a Roth IRA until I was able to balance the new standard payment schedule with my other expenses. Luckily, after many years of loan payments, I was able to figure out a financial plan that worked for me. I do, however, regret the years in my 20s when I didn't make payments to my Roth IRA because the money was going to pay back student loans. Meanwhile, I heard about a program called Public Service Loan Forgiveness, PSLF, maybe 13 years ago. And when I checked it out, I was excited because I thought I could qualify for it. When my 10 years of public service arrived, I started filling out the paperwork, but kept getting rejected. I didn't understand the different kinds of repayment plans, why my repayment plan didn't qualify, and why my particular kind of federal loan wasn't eligible for PSLF. I had a hard time getting help with it because the loan servicers were not clear about the terms and conditions. 10 years passed, then 12, then 16. I felt despair every time I would get my monthly bill and see the balance inching down despite so many years of difficult work. I'd meet people who bragged that their company paid for them to get an MBA, and I would think, why does your company need to pay for you to get an MBA? My school system did not pay for my master's. Is your work more valuable than mine? These elements made me feel insignificant and unappreciated. If a person devotes themselves to public service, I think it makes sense to show we attach importance to their life's work. A few years ago, the National Education Association, NEA, paid for its union members to get a free membership with a company called Savvy that helps students find loan relief. They got my paperwork arranged for me to eventually qualify for PSLF. This meant that I faced the prospect of paying for 10 more years, and then the balance of my loans would be forgiven. I resigned myself to the fact that I would have to make payments all the way up until my retirement. However, in November 2021, I got a Thanksgiving miracle. I got a letter in the mail from FedLoan saying that I qualified for total student loan forgiveness under the limited PSLF waiver. My jaw dropped open when I saw the $0 balance. $22,346.46 was erased. Overcome with emotion, I started screaming and running around crying in the mailroom downstairs. The moment I'd waited 16 years for had arrived. I was able to start putting a lot more money into my Roth IRA, get serious about retirement, and pay off my credit cards as a result. I also felt acknowledged for my 16 years of public service. It is vital that teachers can reach loan forgiveness by year 10 if we are to continue having quality teachers in the classroom. Otherwise, more lucrative professions will steal them away. Certainly, there is much work to be done, and I appreciate your time this morning and your work on these items. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. My mother was, whose name is Emily, was an English teacher in Georgia, by the way. And she went to Wesleyan College in Macon, which was mostly a teacher's school, but it was decades ago and didn't face any of these debt issues like the kind of burden that you faced. But thank you at least at one point in making us smile. I noticed that particularly that Ms. Pickett smiled when you told that story. So Megan Bailey's a social worker, veteran, single mom, enrolled descendant member of a tribe. She's a member of the National Association of Social Workers, works with high-risk populations in rural Montana. Ms. Bailey, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Greetings, Chairman Brown and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Megan Bailey, and I'm a clinical social worker. I appreciate the opportunity to share my education, work, and student loan journey with you today. I'm a veteran of the Montana State Army National Guard, and I'm a member of the Fort Peck Assiniboine Sioux tribes in northeastern Montana. I also have 3 children, and I'm a single mother. I'm currently employed with community mental health centers and substance use addiction treatment centers. I provide clinical services in rural and frontier areas in western Montana. I grew up in Billings, Montana, in a middle-class family where the importance of education and public service were instilled in me at an early age. I graduated high school in 1999 with the full intention of attending Montana State University Billings to pursue either education or nursing. I knew that I wanted to follow in my parents' footsteps, which included healthcare, and my grandparents' footsteps, which included teaching. I soon realized, as did my parents, that tuition and fees were significantly higher than they were in the 70s when my parents had attended school. We also discovered that my parents' combined income and made me ineligible for grants and student aid. The tragedy was my parents' combined income wasn't really that much. And if they were to pay for me to go to school, then that meant they wouldn't be able to put away for retirement. I'm willing to compromise my parents' elderly years. I proudly joined the Montana Army National Guard with the hopes of being able to attend the Montana State University system and utilize my military benefits while I served the 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year. Unfortunately, I was discharged from the military due to a medical condition in about 2 years of service in, and with that went my ability to pay for education. At 21 years of age, I moved to Missoula, Montana to pursue nursing. I took out one round of private loans that my parents were required to co-sign on because I didn't have any credit. I was instantly underwater. With guilt for compromising my parents, I decided to take a semester off, work as much as I possibly could, pay off those private loans, and try to save to go back to school. I still had to claim my parents' income until I was 24. I left the University of Montana, and thankfully, because I was a tribal member, I was able to attend one of our tribe's colleges. I attended Salish Kootenai College with about an hour commute from my hometown in each direction to pursue nursing. While at Salish Kootenai College, I was exposed to psychology and given a beautiful opportunity to go back to the University of Montana, Missoula, where I lived, and get a scholarship called Indians into Psychology that allowed me to get my bachelor's degree in psychology. During that time, I worked as a crisis relief worker for an area mental health center where we stabilized adults with severe mental illness. Knowing that that was about the height I could get in life with a bachelor's degree, a supervisor had suggested that I go back to school and get a master's in social work. And to be honest, I had no idea what that was. I came to find out that it's the master's in social work that render most of the behavioral health services across the nation. I diagnose, I treat mental health and addiction, and I bill health insurance. I also knew that this degree was critical for me to be able to continue to provide the services that I was passionate about. I was told at the time with an MSW, I would make between $20 and $25 an hour. And honestly, that seemed like a fortune. I now know that even with my clinical license, because our reimbursement rates with health insurance are so low, and with the required clinical experience, that's not enough money. I was able to attend the Walla Walla University School of Social Work that had a campus in Missoula, and I utilized the Grad Plus student loan program to cover my tuition expenses. Within 1 month of graduation, I was working as a clinical social worker or therapist with abused children in a rural clinic within the boundaries of the Confederated Salish Kootenai tribes, still about an hour commute from my home each way. I also found out that I was pregnant with my first child. Despite the fact that I was working full-time, I had to utilize my Montana Medicaid system to cover my pre- and postnatal care because I didn't make enough money to afford my health insurance package with my company. 6 months post-graduation, I received, as a pregnant mother on Medicaid, my first student loan bill. It was over $500 more than what I made gross each month. I had to apply for economic hardship deferral, but don't worry, I was still paying the interest rates. I took about 5 weeks off maternity leave and instantly went back to work. I was committed to working as much as I could because I had to get 3,000 hours clinical practice in order to become a licensed clinical social worker so I could apply for the NHSC student loan repayment program. Once licensed, I applied for a very confusing program. I consolidated my loans, and with zero notice, NHSC put $50,000 in my checking account with no instructions about 7 months later. I knew I had to work full-time for 2 years to pay off that commitment. During that time, I became pregnant again, and this was a high-risk, complicated pregnancy. I'm an older mom. I received an extension from NHSC so that I could take the time off needed for this high-risk pregnancy, which amounted to about 6 months. I was told by NHSC that I actually had not received an extension and that they were fining me an additional $2,000 a month for failure to meet my commitment. After a few nervous breakdowns and countless hours on the phone, it was a mistake. I really did qualify for the extension. And so after 2.5 years, I was able to utilize that $50,000 and apply it towards my student loans, the largest check I've ever written in my life. And it barely covered the interest that I had accrued during that time. My last hope was a public service loan forgiveness program. I've been working nonprofit literally the whole of my life, including 9.5 years clinical work in rural Montana. With the new waiver program, I applied for loan forgiveness and I anxiously waited. This would be a daydream. 2 weeks ago, Public Service Loan Forgiveness sent me an email requesting clarity on a tax ID number. I emailed back the clarity. They then responded and said, "That's the wrong EIN number. We're closing your application." But don't worry, I'm really good at paperwork. I've reapplied. It's a mistake. I know for a fact I've been working nonprofit for years. So wish me luck. There is no right answer. I have never made more than $45,000 a year working in community behavioral health. I owed $177,000 in student loans in 2016. I have always worked. I've served in the military, and I live a very modest life. I'm very much stuck between wanting to make the community a better place for my children and grandchildren to grow up in, and wanting to make my home life better for my children. I've considered taking a job out of my field. With community behavioral health uncertain with low reimbursement rates, I decided to pursue a doctorate in integrated behavioral health, a new trend in holistic healthcare, with the hopes of being able to earn enough money to hopefully be able to potentially pay off my student loans if this public service thing doesn't end up working for me. Currently, and with my entire doctoral program included in, I owe $290,000 in student loan debt. I'm proud of having served in the American military. I'm proud of being a tribal member. I love my community and I love my country. My biggest fear is not the reality that I will die with student loan debt or not be able to pay for my students' education or my children's education. I worry about the pipeline into healthcare and behavioral healthcare professions. Why on earth would any high school student want to choose a career in healthcare or mental health with such exorbitant tuition, low salaries, and difficult working conditions? I cannot imagine encouraging my children to follow in my footsteps and their grandparents' and great-grandparents' footsteps. Thank you for your time. Panamia, which is thank you in Assiniboine.
Ms. Bailey, thank you, and all of you. Thank you for your generosity of spirit and your inspiring stories. And you know, all of you are public servants. All of you, the people that you serve, whether it's women in Virginia, Ms. Pickett, or the work you do in Maryland, Ms. Harberger, Ms. Robinson, your students in Georgia, and Ms. Bailey, the people you serve in rural Montana are lucky to have you. And I especially appreciate Ms. Harberger and Ms. Bailey talked about the intergenerational impact of this, talking about parents, talking about children, next generation, and how important this is. These stories will matter. A number of my colleagues tuned in, their staffs are watching. I know that particularly the home state senators, Senator Van Hollen, Ms. Harberger, Senator Warner, and Virginia, Ms. Pickett, and Senator Tester, one of my best friends in the Senate, Ms. Bailey, and committed, I know, to rural Montana. I hear it from him all the time. So thank you. We're doing a hearing examining the impact student loan servicers have on workers. This Thursday, your voices will highlight how student debt undermines the dignity of work and the need for us to act to reduce this debt burden. I think your stories have been remarkable and heartfelt, and I think about what we have done to this generation, taking and you and the next generation, people that are younger than you all are on this call, and where we go. But this is our job is clearer to me. What we need to do after hearing the testimony of the four of you, and I thank you. And Please, I know you've been working with Erica in our office, and please stay in touch with her if there's anything we can do. And again, thank you for your stories, and that you all continue not just to serve the public, but that you continue to encourage others to serve the public in challenging times. So thank you all for being here today. The committee is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
everybody.